Chapter 8. Hunting Gumiho. Today was the day Gumiho was going to finally pay for her crimes. But something needed to happen to get Gumiho out in the open. Inari was going to need bait. But not just any bait, but a delicacy. So Inari dressed in her new modest attire and went to see her brother in his monastery, catechizing the protogens and kitsunes that decided to join him. But without a priest, Victor had no authority to baptize and chrismate them unless they were deathly ill. And rather than catechize the youth, old kitsunes and protogens solely through words and lectures, he thought it best to catechize them through the example of his own self. And when Inari saw this, she noticed a change in them, in the sense that the influence of dark magic was weaker on them than it had been before. However, Inari wasn't quite sure what her brother was doing, so she merely watched while no one was paying attention to her. However, when the catechumens noticed Inari, they bowed before her, but in a rare moment of humility, Inari said, "There is no need to bow before me in the shrine of my brother's Okami. You are not under my authority here, but his." The catechumens then stood up straight as Inari asked, "Victor, I know this is important to you, but I have to speak to you privately." Victor then said to the catechumens, "Continue what we discussed today when you return home." While Victor went with his sister to his cell, then Victor asked, "What is it?" Inari then couldn't look at her brother in the eye as she remained silent. She then broke the silence and said, "I don't want to have to say it, but I need you as bait to lure Gumiho out of hiding." Victor then immediately said, "That's not happening." But Inari pleaded, "Please, I can't allow Gumiho to kill any more kitsunes. I know you'd feel the same way. But unless I have a pure heart to lure her out, there's not a chance we'll find her and bring her to justice." Victor then saw his sister and felt with his ethereal magic that his sister was being sincere and not merely false compassion. Victor then contemplated his sister's changing state of mind and said, "I see you're changing for the better, but I'm not going to become Gumiho bait unless there's absolutely no other way to lure Gumiho out for capture." Inari then subconsciously touched her face while saying, "I understand, and I'm willing to listen if you have a better method." Victor then took a deep breath and said, "I can't say I know all the answers, but one of many answers might be enabling the people to protect themselves." Inari then gasped before saying, "Arming the population? Have you lost your mind?" However, Victor was unmoved. "I believe our people need to learn to protect themselves. If not Gumiho, then something else will come after them. And right now, that's dark magic, and I won't always be there to protect them." Inari then gritted her interlocking teeth and begrudgingly said, "Then I'll allow it just this one time. But when Gumiho is dead, their weapons and ability to start a revolution will be confiscated to protect the social order. But now I have another fear. I'm afraid that the possibility that our clan's allegiance to Okami Inari may have actually enabled this dark magic to flourish. I think this because dark magic is fueled by selfishness, impurity, lies, greed, and vanity. And to me at least, our culture's former values of honor, sincerity, and purity are at odds with Okami Inari's values of prosperity. And now I can't decide whether prosperity or purity is greater. If I choose honor, sincerity, and purity, I will not have prosperity. And if I choose prosperity, then honor, sincerity, and purity will be merely illusions." Victor then pondered what his sister was saying, but knew she wasn't stupid. So he asked her, "What does it truly mean to be prosperous?" Inari then answered, "I'm not really sure I know anymore. When I look at all the wealth and power I've gained over the centuries, I've never been able to enjoy it. It's like is that prosperous? Or am I just chasing after something that could never fulfill me? But I also understand I need basic necessities to live, and I can't have that without at least some prosperity. And then I see you, for some unknown reason, as successful, even though I own so many more things than you. And sometimes I think you're better and more prosperous than me. Just don't tell that to anyone else. Victor then began to notice Inari slump her shoulders. I won't, but I must ask, is owning all these things making you happy? Inari then looked down as her eyes went glossy. I'm not happy. I always feel like I never have enough, and there's always something missing from inside me. And if I'm not happy, I'm not prospering, but suffering in silence. I'm suffering from what the world calls success. Have you considered the possibility that it was not meant for you, but for someone else? I have, and I believe you're more deserving of my success than I am. Also, please don't tell that to anybody else, especially because I'm image of Inari. I won't. But in regard to my success in the spiritual life, I often feel like I've failed, and failed severely even though people continuously praise me despite me only doing what I'm supposed to do. So even if you gave me all that you possess, I would not feel worthy of it, and with all my heart, and all that I am, refuse it. Inari then looked at her brother with sad curiosity. Then, despite being the most powerful kitsune to ever live, you seem to have chosen a simple life not worthy of your power and wisdom. Why is that? It's because I am not entitled to anything. And what I have been given is not for my indulgence, but for the well-being and salvation of others. I was not given the gift of life, not to be served, but to serve. Earthly pleasures, empires, riches, and even my own near 1,000-year-old body will fade. But what is good, pure, and true will remain forever. So, I have dedicated my life to pursuing virtue and becoming like the one I serve. And like the Okami you serve, you have become. Not yet. Inari and Vixie. As Inari returned to her palace of hedonism, things never looked the same again. Her nude statues and fetishized positions began to disgust her for their impure and dishonorable depictions, now that she was no longer under the influence of the keys of prosperity. And without the influence of dark magic, she began to feel things in her heart, both pleasant and painful. She began to see that there was more to the world than possessions, but also the pain of her own failures. But rather than give up, Inari thought to herself, I'm not letting these failures stop me on the road to perfection. Instead, I'll use them as an opportunity to grow more perfect. Inari then returned to her executor and said, Vixie, I have an announcement to make. For the time being, while Gumiho is out there, I'm temporarily lifting some of the restrictions placed on citizens owning weapons of war. Now, citizens are allowed to possess hunting-grade rifles and revolvers until Gumiho is confirmed dead. I've changed my mind about using my brother's pure heart as Gumiho bait, except as a last resort. Ninetails and my brother are not disposable. Vixie then looked at Inari, taken a bit back, and asked, And where are you going to get these weapons? Inari then answered, From our strategic armories in the case the Taunukis ever decide to invade, and if we needed to conscript the male population. Now I'm certainly not asking the Taunukis for help, because I know they would have a field day with it. Then I'll have someone get on it. By the way, the latest Gumiho incident was a no-Jitsune protogen. Because of the remote control chip installed in them, Gumiho was able to shut down his augmentations and make them unable to fight back, when she bit their heart and liver out of them. So I've contacted some protogen part engineers in Solsuda to come here and get those control chips removed to prevent this from happening again. There's no reason a Nojitsune protogen should have been killed by Gumiho. Then I'll get on it while I get Blondie and my own protogens prepared to kill that witch. And I like you thinking ahead. Ever since you've changed the rules a bit and allowed the Nojitsune protogens to refer to each other by their names and customize the augmentations off-duty and remove their visors, morale has increased, making them more productive. And because of that, you've made them more useful. Did you know this? Tenko. For those who are unfamiliar with the Kitsune folklore, Tenko is a subset of Kitsune that have gained their 9th tail and have become celestial foxes. They are said to be clairvoyant, while also being able to know the future. Victor falls into this category, although his ability to see into the future is not actually seeing the future, but his strong intuition, seeing where present actions typically go based on wisdom he has gained over the centuries. His ethereal magic also grants him a limited clairvoyance, but ethereal magic is something only kitsunes with all 9 tails can use. Hence, when Inari said, "9 tails and my brother are not disposable," she was speaking of both the rarity of a 9 tails and their abilities that are incredibly unique and too powerful to be wasted. Victor is also a celestial fox, in the sense that he does not care for earthly vainglory, hedonism, or self-importance, but focused on living a true spiritual life. But unlike the description of the Tenko from folklore, Victor does not treat himself or allow others to worship him as a divine being, knowing full well he is not divine, but the one he serves is. However, because the Dark Mage is primarily a work of Christian fiction, the Tenko's motives and descriptions are very different from the folklore source material. Such examples of this include Tenko not being fully perfect while living, and not being Gnostic in the sense of treating the physical world as impure and evil, and the goal of life being to be free from the physical body as if it were somehow a prison for the soul. Also, Tenko in the Dark Mage can come in different fur colors and patterns than white and gold or silver. Todd Reddington still has the color pattern of a red fox.